What's up, everybody? So I'm back, and I'm continuing to go over what was being printed in the press at the time of Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey's arrest and what was being printed at the time their trial was going on. Now, we're actually getting to the very end of Steven Avery's trial, but I will continue to go over what was printed after both trials were over. The first article from today is from March 16th, 2007, and it is from the Madison, Wisconsin State Journal. The headline is, "The Avery Jury Gets Murder Case for Deliberations." The attorney for a man who spent 18 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit asked jurors Thursday to set things right by acquitting him of a murder charge, but the prosecution said not to let sympathy factor into their decision. The jury of 7 men and 5 women then deliberated for about 4.5 hours before retiring for the night. Deliberations were to resume this morning. You will set a lot of things right if you get it right here, defense attorney Dean Strang said in closing arguments. The 1985 case won't matter so much anymore if justice is done right this time. What a sentence, considering we know what would happen. In a rebuttal, Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz said it was absolutely improper for the defense to ask jurors to take the old case into account. He argued the DNA evidence clearly shows Steven Avery is responsible for the case before the jurors, the killing of 25-year-old photographer Teresa Halbach. A not guilty verdict now won't change the wrongful conviction, Strang told jurors Thursday, but it won't matter so much anymore. The injustice done to Steven Avery then, because there is something redemptive to human beings going back and trying again to get it right eventually, he said. Steven Avery settled a wrongful conviction lawsuit against Manitowoc County last year, and his defense attorneys say 2 deputies were angry and embarrassed over it and planted evidence on Steven Avery's property. Attorneys stated their closing arguments Wednesday and finished them Thursday. Halbach's brother Mike Halbach said after court Thursday that he was confident Avery would be found guilty. He said he would accept whatever verdict the jury delivered. He said it was too early to say whether he would change his mind about who is responsible if Steven Avery was acquitted. Ken Kratz, for the first time publicly, told the prosecution's theory of what happened to Halbach that day. It says for the first time, didn't he do that? Maybe I'm mistaken, but didn't he do that in a press conference in March of 2006? I think he did. Maybe I'm wrong. For the first time publicly, Ken Kratz told the prosecution's theory of what happened to Halbach that day. Avery backed Halbach's vehicle into his empty garage, closed the garage door, and at some point shot her at least twice and put her in the back of her vehicle, Ken Kratz said. You notice how he doesn't say Brendan Dassey is anywhere in any of this? He doesn't do it very gently because we know there is motivation involved. He throws, if you will, Teresa in the back because of the blood spatter across the back of the open gate, he said. But Teresa is laying at rest. She is resting at peace, having been killed by Steven Avery. Kratz said the jury would have to believe there's someone else out there who committed the murder, if they acquitted Avery, a killer who knew about the lawsuit and skillfully exploited the deputies' alleged animosity and planted evidence. That's absurd. If this wasn't such an important decision that you had to make, it would be laughable, he said. But Strang said the deputies were biased and planted the key found in Steven Avery's bedroom with his DNA on it, blood in Halbach's vehicle, and bones in his backyard. Strang said the DNA does not tell the story. People do, and jurors should look skeptically on witness statements. You have to listen to people and sort out who you believe and who you don't, Strang said. Strang also said the prosecution hasn't been successful in proving Avery's guilt. He has not been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt because he's not guilty. That's what I'm asking you today in getting it right. The next article is from March 17th, 2007 from the Madison, Wisconsin State Journal. Stephen Avery jury told to start over on deliberations. The jurors deciding Stephen Avery's fate had to start deliberations over Friday after the judge replaced one who had a family emergency. The jury then, I think that juror is actually in Making a Murderer, if I'm correct. I think I remember at least one juror being interviewed in the documentary. The jury then deliberated about 8 hours before retiring for the day on Friday. Judge Patrick Willis said Friday that the sheriff alerted him around 9 p.m. Thursday that a male juror had a family emergency, and Willis dismissed the juror. The man was replaced by a female alternate who had been sequestered with the 12 deliberating jurors. If you have formed any views about the evidence up until now, you must set those views aside and start over. Willis told the jury Friday this is necessary to ensure the full participation of all 12 jurors in the deliberation process. They asked the judge Friday afternoon whether they could read or hear a transcript of Bobby Dassey's testimony. Dassey, who is Stephen Avery's nephew, testified that he saw Teresa Halbach at the salvage yard at about 2:30 p.m. and last saw her walking towards Stephen Avery's trailer as he left home about 15 minutes later. Teresa Halbach was never in Stephen Avery's trailer. He also testified that he heard his uncle and a friend joke about hiding a body the same day she was reported missing. Willis told jurors Friday they couldn't get the full transcript but could request specific portions. Couldn't get the full transcript. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's not a serious situation or nothing. We can't give you all of it. We'll just give you parts of it that fit the narrative, allegedly, of what we want you to do. This next article is from March 18th, 2007, and it is from the Madison, Wisconsin State Journal. Stephen Avery jurors review DNA testimony. Juries deliberating a third day on whether a man wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit had killed a female photographer asked Saturday to review testimony from one of the prosecution's key witnesses. The jury started deliberating Thursday but had to start again on Friday because the judge replaced one of the jurors who had a family emergency. On Saturday afternoon, the jurors asked Judge Patrick Willis for portions of the testimony from the trial's 33rd witness, Sherry Coulan, a DNA analyst at the state crime lab. Willis read jurors part of the defense attorney Jerome Buting's cross-examination of Sherry. Sherry said she didn't find the DNA of Avery or Halbach on the .22 caliber rifle found hanging on Stephen Avery's bedroom wall. It's the same gun that a firearm expert linked to the bullet found in Stephen Avery's garage that had Halbach's DNA on it. You know that if someone shoots another human being with a gun that's very close to them, there may be blowback, a spatter of blood onto that weapon, Jerome Buting asked. I assume that's possible, Sherry said. Well, that's what you were looking for, Buting said. I was simply looking for bloodstains, yes, Sherry said. On Friday, the jury asked for the entire transcript of Bobby Dassey's testimony, but Willis said they could be given only specific portions. That is absolutely ridiculous. Avery's nephew, Bobby Dassey, testified that he saw Halbach at the salvage yard at about 2:30 p.m. and last saw her walking towards Avery's trailer as he left home about 15 minutes later, which is about an hour off from the defense timeline. He also testified that on the day Halbach was reported missing, he heard his uncle and a friend joke about hiding her body. Defense attorney Dean Strang urged jurors Thursday to help set things right for Avery by finding him not guilty. In a rebuttal, Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz said it was absolutely improper for the defense to ask that. He argued that the DNA evidence clearly shows Stephen Avery is responsible in the case before the jurors. Sherry Coulan also testified that she tested the bullet and deemed the magic bullet by the defense and found Halbach's DNA on it. Jerry Buting criticized her work because she deviated from protocol when she contaminated a control test. She inserted her own DNA accidentally into the test. 4 months after Avery was arrested, his then 16-year-old nephew Brendan Dassey reportedly confessed, saying the two raped and killed Teresa Halbach and burned her remains. Avery was then charged with sexual assault, false imprisonment. Dassey recanted his confession and turned down plea deals that would have required him to testify against his uncle. His trial is scheduled to start April 16th. The rape and kidnapping charges against Avery were dismissed in January, and the false imprisonment charge was dismissed this month for lack of evidence. Absolute pure insanity. That's where we're going to leave the articles today. It is extremely sad what happened to Brendan Dassey. He is not mentioned at all in the closing arguments of Ken Kratz. And yes, I get it, I understand it, but it's disgusting of how Stephen Avery was found guilty of killing Teresa Halbach one way, and Brendan Dassey was convicted of Teresa Halbach being killed another way. I understand how the law works. It's stupid. How can two people be convicted of the same murder two different ways? Absolutely ridiculous. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you again soon.